I did have one request to record this for someone who couldn't make it, and I'm doing that for the first time because I usually remember it after the meeting is over. So just so you know, we're being recorded now. Well, just to kind of give everybody a little background on how we got here today, I made a call out to the college coaches in our state, just asking them some questions. And probably the first one that came up was, how are they managing their component of recruiting in this time when meets are very thin, if happening at all, and swimmers can't come to campuses and things like that? And what could we do at the club level or at the LSC level to enhance that process, improve that process for our own athletes? So they were kind enough to all get together and meet with me and just have some chats about different topics. And then we moved on to, you know, our conclusion from that is sharing these topics with the coaches is going to be the most beneficial plan going forward. It's a little more challenging to get directly to the swimmers. And if the coaches aren't on board or aren't aware or up to date on some items and pushing them, then the swimmers aren't going to be able to follow through or make it really happen for them. So that was where we took the conversation. You know, some other questions for me have popped up in the meantime that I've, you know, we'll ask if we need to. Hopefully you guys have a question or two while we have our coaches on the line with us. We are short Coach Langford from Centenary. He called, said he was unavailable. And then to update everybody, Dave Geyer from LSU just had his appendix removed within the last couple of hours. So he is unlikely to pop in. Reed may have more of an update. If you want to chime in there.
I haven't reached out to him since yesterday evening, but I know we're all cheering for him. So appendixes can be tricky business, but no news is good news.
Yeah. Agreed. We have TJ from Loyola and Leah from Tulane on. So again, my job is hosting. My job is not telling you anything that I know. In fact, I like to be on these calls because I always pick up something that I thought I knew, or maybe it's updated because a lot of things change. So on the topic of TJ or Leah, whoever's going to take the lead on some of these, how are you handling recruiting of athletes in the COVID 2020?
I'll go first. I'm Division I, TJ's Division II, so our situation's slightly different. For Division I, we are currently, this is for all sports, but we're currently in what's called dead period. And for dead period, that means that we are not permitted to physically interact with recruits. So we can't have face-to-face conversations. We can't go watch meets. We can't go watch practice. The only interaction we're permitted to have with them is via electronic. So like this, like Zoom, phone calls, emails, texts. We're permitted to do that. And that is until currently, as of right now, it's until April 15th. We're also just generally, this has always been a rule within the past few years, is that we are not permitted to speak to a recruit until June 15th after their sophomore year. So if any recruit reaches out to us and they're a freshman or a sophomore, we can't even reply to them. But after that point, we can reply to them, we can interact with them. But as of right now, the challenge for us is that we can't have any physical interaction. We can't pay for any official visits. And so we've had recruits come in on campus and pay for themselves to come on campus to look around, but we can't even meet with them when they come on campus. So that's a huge challenge in general, especially for myself, because I'm trying to build the program. So face-to-face interaction is always important. And my team is really good at when recruits come on campus and making them feel welcome, showing them around campus, just giving them information that they need. But we can't do that anymore. So that's a little challenging. So we have to pivot, adjust, and figure out a way to make it work.
Leah, on that, sorry, TJ, I'll give you the floor in a sec.
Yeah,
On
no
the
worries.
June 15th after their sophomore year, that's all levels of communication directly to the swimmer?
Correct.
Okay.
All levels. Yes.
All right, thanks. TJ, go ahead.
We're a little different. We're in the NAI, so think of us like the Wild Wild West.
My bad. I thought you were Division II. Oh, so
Yeah,
you're
no worries.
just a full-blown anything you want to do.
Pretty much, yeah. You can think of us kind of like the Wild Wild West, as far as like we still have been bringing recruits on campus for our visits. We can talk to, recruits really as young. I mean, we generally don't talk to anybody below a sophomore or a junior. But things for us, obviously, we have had to change a little bit of how our recruiting goes when they visit on campus. Obviously, with the policies and procedures of the school itself, and then with the state, we have to follow all those. But we have had 4 recruiting visits in the fall. Typically that's our approach: 3 or 4 in the fall, 3 or 4 in the spring. So recruiting has been going well for us. We've learned to adapt in these times, as I'm sure everybody has. And we've made the best of it with things. And we've also used the amount of extra time we have to start working on next year's class. So just a little bit about where we are with things.
Following that, though, kind of my follow-up question as coming at this from technical planning and even my own club is what do club teams and or the LSCs do to help their athletes in this time when you can't get them on campus? What do you as coaches, college coaches, want to see or hear? How do you guys connect better when you're not able to go to see a swimmer and they're not able to come to your campus? How are you feeling? How are you managing that component of it?
We've set up virtual visits where sometimes, we've had a group that we did a virtual visit for. We've done some individual virtual visits where we had them Zoom or FaceTime with one of our athletes, and they took them through a day in the life of what it's like for them on campus right now. We had them Zoom in and watch a practice while we had some of our athletes on deck who had already done the practice, talking to them and try to interact with them as practice was going on. We've tried to be as creative as we can with people who are obviously in different situations, different parts of the country. So what I would say is, there is a way to make it work, but sometimes it takes a little bit more patience, and there's a lot more communication that goes back and forth. If I would always tell swimmers and coaches, if you reach out once and you don't hear back from a coach, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. There are tons of emails, there are tons of text messages that sometimes slip through my mailbox or slip through my phone. And I look back and sometimes I catch them and sometimes I don't. So I always say, if you reach out and something doesn't happen once, reach out again and get the lines of the communication and get that dialogue started back and forth, whether it be the swimmer, whether it be the coach. I would definitely say that the swimmer and the coach first. Parents would be a secondary venue to go down, but I would say, don't let one time or just get those lines of communication open and going.
Leah, would you chime in on your thoughts about parents communicating?
Well, before I touch on that, so for Division I, it's slightly different in that recently, probably about 3 weeks ago, we just got a rule passed down that we are not permitted to show practice. So we're not allowed to have a Zoom with a recruit while we're at practice, which we had done before the rule was passed. So that was a recent thing that we received. However, another rule that was passed that does help us is that we can now instruct our athletes to contact recruits if we need to. So that's another way that we are able to have in contact. We also have Zoom meetings with our athletes talking to any recruits that we're really interested in. But the first and foremost thing that to get us on the radar, for them to be on our radar are times. So we, as brutal and as rude as it may come across, times are the first and foremost thing that we're looking at to even start talking to a recruit. So for myself, for example, you know, I've only been here 2 years, so this is my third season. So I'm still trying to build the team up to get it at the level that I would like to see it nationally. So times are, you know, the first thing that we have to rely on because we can't go to meet. So it's not like in the past, I'll go to a meet, watch a meet, and then I'm usually watching the prospects' technique, how well they race, their underwaters. Like I'm watching a whole bunch of stuff. And so their times may not necessarily reflect what they're doing technically. But right now I don't have that. I'm not able to do that. Even sometimes on video, it's hard to see that because of the angle, how far away the person is taking the video. So right now, we rely a lot on times.
Yeah, ask a question about times?
Yep.
Real quick, because this came up in the last couple of weeks. And do you guys use Swim Cloud, which I guess ties into collegeswimming.com? Do you use that ever in terms of a tool for searching times and everything?
Yes.
Heard of it? I talked to the coaches; they'd never heard of it, and I got some moms obsessed with it.
So we rely a lot on college swimming and on USA swimming times. But yes, to answer your question, we do use, because as you said, it's tied into college swimming. So
which I had no idea. I'd never heard of Swim Club until a couple of weeks ago when a mom got mad at me because I hadn't uploaded any results. And I didn't know what she was talking about.
So college swimming is a big resource that we use because on college swimming, we can track how much they've improved. What is their gradient of improvement throughout the years and stuff like that. But we do use collegeswimming.com, and we also use USA Swimming. So typically if we get an email from a recruit and they say, oh, I did X time, my best times are whatever, the first thing we're doing is going on college swimming and checking those times, or USA Swimming and checking those times, first and foremost. Go ahead, Art.
So with the COVID and so many kids swimming in unsanctioned meets that aren't getting uploaded, are you contacting the coaches if the times don't match up?
Yes. So that's a great question. Yes, we are. That's one, even without the times, we're reaching out to coaches. So let's say for us, I can't speak for TJ, but let's say we receive an email from a kid that does have the times we're looking for. One of our typical next step is that we're going to reach out to coaches and to get, not only to make sure that the times are correct, but for us, it's to find out the character of the swimmer. How much is their work ethic? Do they show up for practice? Are they a good leader? Just that we're getting the feedback from the coach, because at the end of the day, you guys are going to be the ones that see them the most often and are going to see them most in an unfiltered format. And so going back to Ross's question as it relates to parents, I personally do not want to hear from parents. I want to hear from either their coach or the athlete themselves. Because at the end of the day, the athlete is going to be who I'm going to be coaching. When they come to college, I tell my freshman parents, don't reach out to me. Don't contact me, because your child is now an adult. They're in college. They have to learn to speak for themselves. They have to learn one of my tenets of our team is communication. And so they have to learn it. And unfortunately, a lot of the kids nowadays don't have the life skill to just speak. They can text all day, all night. Some of them don't even have the skills to write an email. So it's important to me that they learn to speak for themselves and articulate whatever it is that they want, whatever they may feel. I do tell my parents that if they notice something that's not right with their child, the first thing is to encourage their child to come talk to one of us. Even if it's not me, speak to my assistant, speak to my athletic trainer, because they need to know those skills. But if it gets serious enough, then yes, reach out to me. But otherwise, you know, during the recruiting process, we are essentially vetting that prospect. We're vetting the way they speak. We're vetting the way to see, because with time, we're able to notice their attitude, how responsible they are, how quick they are to respond. If they're anything like my son, if they don't respond, like he's just lives in cloud nine, but he thinks he knows everything. But yeah, to answer your question, Ross, for us, specifically for our program, and I know a lot of other Division I programs are like this, they would rather not communicate with parents because we don't get a good feel for the prospect themselves if we're communicating with parents.
Question that came up as I was thinking about things in the last couple of days. We did a little college presentation for our, basically what is our 13 to about 15-year-old group, and realizing, looking at some of those athletes, and we were talking about times. How are you as coaches, and how should the kids, you know, this is kind of a two-part question on the same subject. We've got a bunch of 14 and 15-year-olds that are in their freshman year, sophomore year. You know, and there's a lot of physical and a lot of emotional development still to happen. You know, how are you looking at the improvement that those kids can potentially make? And on the same side, how do those kids look at their times now, project them forward, and start having any concept of what type of program that they're well suited for? You know, because you guys are having to look at athletes earlier than you did a handful of years ago. And these kids are not fully developed in almost any way. You may get a couple of them that are, and those kids usually stand out. But the average swimmer, you know, the 15-year-old girl who's in her sophomore year that's sniffing around sectionals, I'm just thinking of one that's on my pool deck. She's probably about 5'3" and about 90 pounds, but her dad is 6'6" and about 300. Like, where, I don't know if she's going to grow into half of her dad's size or stay a little closer to mom. And I don't even have any clue, because these are the kids that still surprise me. You know, they'll pop a meet at the end of a season. You're like, okay, you trained fine, but damn, you just dropped 20 seconds in a 500 free. How do you evaluate what's coming at this point, and how do they even evaluate how they may fit into your program, you know, looking at it from the outside in?
TJ, you want to go, or do you want me to go?
You can go. I'll follow you.
I do not admire TJ because he has to deal with males. I think for males, it's way more difficult for such an early time period to be able to figure out. For females, I could pretty much get a good feel after, so the spring semester of their junior year. Their spring semester of their junior year, you can get a pretty good feel as to where they're at to help you with what you need moving forward for college. That's what I found for females. For males, I'm so glad I'm no longer trying to figure that out, because it's much harder. It is much harder because they definitely, some of them don't hit their peak until they're in college. When they put on muscle, they've trained a little more, they're around other males to push them even further. So in terms of physicality, I think females, you can get a good feel spring semester of their junior year. Emotionally, they're not where they need. They're not ready for it until their senior year. I am not a big proponent of recruiting any male or female right after their sophomore year, because they don't know what they want. They're clueless, nor should they really need to, because emotionally first of all, I don't want to talk to a 15-year-old on the phone. I have no desire to do that. But you know, it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But athletically, you can get a pretty good feel for that female. Males, TJ, you can speak to that. Males, I think it's a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a coach, I'm expecting them, especially on the guys, how to get bigger and stronger and faster from that sophomore, junior, especially junior, senior. And I mean, I think we all know some of those guys that have grown 4 or 5 inches freshman year of college and, set the world on fire. Unfortunately, that stuff is hard to know exactly what's going to happen. I think that's when, I guess if you're looking at multiple guys or girls who are in the same category, you're trying to pick between, I think that's some kind of comes into it. But once again, I think especially right now, you got to look at the hard facts, what you have in front of you, which is their progression, which they've shown, and then what's ultimately where their times are, as they stand right now. I mean, obviously, I know if a guy's got a mom and a dad who are both above 6 foot, I'm gonna hope and assume they're gonna grow a little bit, but I'm also not gonna bank and put a ton of stuff behind that if that's the only thing I have to go on.
And then also we rely on you guys, the club coaches, to give us an honest assessment. And and honest is not like, oh, they're a great kid. Like an honest one is like, I got to push her every once in a while. Or no, she comes in, kicks butt every time, does whatever I ask her to do. Or sometimes she gets a little distracted. I have a freshman right now who, her club coach I knew from when I was at Florida. So I already had a good rapport with him, and I had a good, I knew him well enough to know what his expectations were. And he told me point blank, she can be a little flaky. She's a good girl, but you got to stay on. Could be really flaky. And sure enough, she is flaky as all get out. But because I knew that, and because I knew her coach, and because I knew her background, I'm able to assess that. I'm able to not attack it, but I'm able to face it head on. So if she's not focused, I could be like, you need to get more focused. But that is feedback I got from her coach. So I already expected that from her, and I knew it was going to come up. So I knew to say to her, this is what I already know this about you. So I'm going to stay on you. That type of information we need before we get them, so we can make an educated decision to help them the best that we can help them.
Leah, you said, by the springtime of the junior year, you can have a pretty good grasp on the physicality and the direction of a female athlete. Based on the newer rules that have come into play over the last couple of years, how late in the process is that really? Or is it more perceived late than actually?
When you say the newer rules, what newer rules are you talking about?
Just your ability to start recruiting right after their sophomore year. Wasn't that somewhat of a change in the last couple of years? So you're kind of you're communicating, like you said, with a 15-year-old and 16, instead of waiting for them to come on campus as seniors and things like that. So is spring semester of the junior year late in this process for the majority of swimmers, or is it only late for the elite?
I think the perception for them that it's late if they want to go to a bigger school. So, or more, I don't know, like a Virginia, Florida, they are looking earlier because they're looking for the girls that are already super fast when they're younger. I think for the athletes that I'm looking at, the spring semester is ideal for us because we're not signing anyone. Like right now, for example, our juniors are what we consider 2022 recruits. So it's not like on a regular year, we probably wouldn't be bringing them in on a trip. We're communicating with them now for sure. But in terms of offering scholarship, it's for their benefit to wait until spring semester, because for us specifically, our assessment as to where they're really at is going to be their spring semester. Now, I would argue to say that maybe the summer may be too late to start talking to coaches. But at least talking to coaches, like talking with us, as I said, we've already started talking to our 2022 people. But, you know, to answer your question, I don't think necessarily spring is too late. But for bigger schools, if they want to go to those bigger top 10 schools, yes, it's too late. But I think you have to be careful. It goes back to times. It goes back to researching the school that you're looking at. What are their top times? I don't think coaches or athletes should rely on what times does it take to make the team. I think your best bet to figure out what times it is to make the team. Like for us, for example, look at our conference meet. Look at the times it takes to make the top 8. Specifically the top 8. What are those times? That is going to give you a good indication as to whether you will fit into that team, whether you would be an asset to that team, whether or not the likelihood of you receiving a scholarship will happen with that team. If you look at top times, that may not help because, like, for example, for us, we may have top times, but it kind of messes up because we're trying to look for the top times in the conference, not the top times on our team. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but that's the direction that we're trying to go.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, as you said, I don't know any coach has ever been on a conference call or stood in front of a group doing a presentation that says, we're really comfortable with the speed and the progress of our team, and we're just looking to maintain a status quo. I think everybody's always looking for, as we all are, that next step forward. How do you get that next athlete that can help challenge or elevate the overall program, at least in a stroke or even an entire class or something like that? So yeah, I absolutely get what you're talking about. I'm not sure where that left us. I kind of lost my train of thought for a little bit. Anybody have any questions as we or anything additional to add on that, wherever we were?
Coaches, again, for D1, when are you guys allowed to reach out to them directly?
June 15th after their sophomore year.
After sophomore year, okay.
Yeah.
Derek?
Yeah. So I know you guys are trying to fill out your roster. How often does it come down to what stroke you're looking for, or are you trying to fill a slot?
That is a great question. For us, it always comes down to that. It always comes down to that. It's constantly an ebb and flow as to what it is we're looking for. But 3 events, it's not just one event. They have to be able to do 3 events well in terms of scholarship. You know, that it's very unlikely that a kid will get, at least for us, will get a full scholarship. You know, we're going to get, for where we're at, we're going to give a full scholarship for that athlete that is, you know, scoring in the top 3 in our conference for sure. But yeah, it ebbs and flows. It's forever changing. And again, it comes down with times. If we're recruiting someone who would be the fastest person on our team, even though we have those people, then we're still going to recruit them. But if we're going to recruit, like, for example, we have a lot of backstrokers, for example. If we're going to get a backstroker, that backstroker has to be faster than all the backstrokers that we currently have. We're more focused towards flyers, sprint flyers and stuff like that. So it's always changing. But yes, that is definitely something that we're always looking at.
I think every year you're going to have certain needs you have to fill, and those are your certain strokes or your people aging out or whatnot. And then, you know, some of it is filling in, but I think every year you have your specific needs, and then you have your open areas where you're looking for that as well. The thing I always tell the swimmers I talk to is you're going to find backstrokers, flyers, IMers who swim freestyle as well. So freestyle gets filled in really quickly. Almost every year we hit our limit, and I'm not looking for freestylers anymore as it comes, you know. And I mean, there are certain years, you know, you need a sprinter or a distance person. But a lot of times it's those major other strokes that you're looking to fill in for as it goes.
Cool. TJ, on that note, I would have thought, my perception would have been a little bit of the opposite, that you might be highlighting those sprint freestylers that fill in so many relay spots. But, and that's just my impression of what it seems like is wanted out there, just from a little bit of contact with some people. So it's very promising to hear.
I always look at you find a dynamite backstroker or flyer or breaststroker, they're going to be able to do pretty solid on freestyle, if not elite freestyle as well with that. I mean, you're always going to need your premier sprinters. With your relays, you're going to need them. But I'm not going to go out there and recruit 450 and 100 specific freestyle people, because I'm going to have other people that are going to be able to come down and fill some of those spots every year. And honestly, like, this is probably the third year in a row where, like, I am absolutely not looking, unless you're super elite on the sprint side and the women's side. Like, I'm way up. It was the easiest thing to fill. We already filled that. And, like, we can't take absolutely any more girls who swim the 50 or the 100.
I'm the opposite. I mean, opposite in the sense of I have people coming in, or I have people that may be interested and call themselves sprinters, but for Division I standards, they're not sprinters. So I can't just pull people in just because they call themselves a sprinter. Now I'm coming from a different direction in the sense that, like, I've coached a lot of high level sprinters, so I have to be careful with my level of standard of where, eventually I'm going to reach where I want to reach, but I have to be patient with what's happening. So on the one hand, yes, I agree with what you're saying, Ross, in terms of, it's ideal to have those freestyle sprinters that can swim 50 and 100 to fill those relay spots, because within Division I, that's where the action's at. That's where you're gonna move up pretty quickly. However, like TJ said, you still need those stroke people, sprint, high, like short burst type of people also to help fill those relay slots as best as we can. But again, within Division I, it unfortunately comes down to times, especially as it relates to relays. But from my position, as I said, I'm trying to build a program. With years coming, as years progress, I definitely will recruit the person that I can develop into sprinters. I could develop into faster swimmers. But, right now I'm limited by space and trying to build a specific culture around Tulane so that we can eventually grow and improve and be better.
Do you look at any stroke specific 50 best times?
No, I do not. I'm looking for 100 or 200 times. And again, it goes back to Derek's question. It goes back to what I need. Mm-hmm. So, I would say right now our program strengths are 200s. So we are now looking for a little bit more people that have speed, who can, because at the end of the day, in order for someone to get faster in an event, they have to have speed. So some people have it, some people don't have it. So yeah, no, we do not. No.
Nope. Same.
Nope. Okay. What do the college coaches see club level coaches being able to do at this time to help their athletes? Whether it's like you said, times are times, and those are out there, and there's, other than training and normal and trying to get into swim meets, I think that's just kind of the norm. We're all trying to do the same type of things, but whether it's video or, I don't know, what other enhancements can club coaches try to do to help their athletes get noticed or to just be prepared for college? And I know that last little part just turns it into a much different subject.
I think that encouraging your athletes to research the school that they're looking at is big. Whether it's Division 1, 2, 3, or NAIA, there's something for everybody. But researching the school is a big one. I think also what TJ mentioned, you can reach out to a coach, but we get a lot of emails. A big one, please encourage them to make sure they have the correct school in the email that they're sending it to. Because if I get an email from an athlete and it says, like the other day, I got an email from an athlete saying Columbia instead of Tulane. I was like, I'm not reading that. I'm done. I'm not even gonna acknowledge that kid. Like, I'm done. Fortunately, their coach contacted me immediately and was like, oh my gosh, this girl just sent you an email. She said Columbia in it. She didn't mean to, blah, 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 blah. And so that definitely helps the situation. So researching the school, when they send an email, introduce themselves, say what times they have, not, oh, I placed first in states. Okay, that's great, but what was your time? Like, that's great, but that doesn't help me very much. What else? I think from a performance perspective, underwaters. Help them to be better in their underwaters, especially if they swim backstroke or butterfly. Underwaters. And not necessarily, I think just getting faster in underwaters. That's a big, because that is just, number one, it will help with their races and help with their times. But coaches notice that if they're able to do it in a race, like that's a big thing that I look for when I'm watching stuff is underwaters. So I had something else, but I can't remember. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, I would echo what Leah said, have an understanding of the school and the coach you're talking about. We laugh about it, but the number of emails I get that have another college name on there, it happens every year. It's a copy and paste. I know what's going on. We all know, but it does make a big difference in there. And then just, helping them realize, be realistic with some of the places they're talking to, and have an understanding, and as far as them as being a swimmer, I would tell them, get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's not just about what you want to do or here, there, it sounds, I guess, like a paradox, but be comfortable being uncomfortable, as far as it goes, especially when you're getting ready to come into college swimming.
I think too, for us, especially with Tulane's an expensive school. However, with Louisiana students, they have so many scholarships available for Louisiana residents. But even out of state people, and I would encourage you guys to do this also, is to, once they get a response from a coach, to have their parents and them to have ready, what can they afford to attend that school? Because in swimming, it is very unlikely that an athlete is going to receive a full scholarship. Their parents are going to have to pay something. So to have that information ready, to know at least, so that when a coach asks them, or they can at least tell their coach, I'm really interested, this is what I can afford. The coach may say, yes, I can make that work, or I'm so sorry, no, I can't make that work, or visit this site, here are some scholarship opportunities. And because for us, again, Tulane's very, very, in my opinion, very expensive. But fortunately for Louisiana residents, they have a lot of opportunities for grants, scholarships, whatever you want to call them. But at the end of the day, it still matters to know what their parents can afford, because there's nothing more worse than a parent's, their child going through all this research, communicating with a coach, and then it gets to the scholarship discussion and they can't afford. Not only have they wasted their own time, but they've wasted our time, because we could have been recruiting somebody else. even as much as we want them. So I think it's good to kind of get them ready for that scholarship, that what they can afford. Like, it's the best thing when a recruit says, hey, can we discuss scholarship? I'm like, oh yeah. It's really hard for them to do it, but when they do it, it's very helpful for me to be able to just put everything on the table as to where you're at.
So do most college coaches have a good feel for where to point the families on applying for additional scholarships and grants?
No, not all. Each school is different. That's why I say no, not all. Each school is very, very different. Like, for example, with Tulane, they have always had like some sort of scholarship option for Louisiana athletes, but I don't have any Louisiana athletes. So most of my kids are out of state. So in terms of pointing them for scholarship, it's really hard because they're not from Louisiana. It was similar to when I was at Florida. Florida had very little scholarship opportunity for out-of-state residents. And so there was no big option for anyone coming into school. Once they were in school, there were scholarship opportunities. But so each school is very different as to what they have available for their in-state, out-of-state, international. So again, it's kind of on the athlete, the prospect, to research that information, but we can help them every once in a while. It just depends where they're from.
Does Tulane have a lot of non-countable state-specific scholarships for student athletes or the general population?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if they're countable or not. It depends. A lot of it depends on where the scholarship is coming from. So our compliance department is on that. Mm-hmm. I liken NC2A rules to tax law. You can twist and turn it any way you can to make it work for you, and it depends on the compliance department. And then there's so many that it's hard to keep track for me as someone as a coach. So I leave that up to our compliance department to determine if it's countable versus not countable. But good question. I don't know. I should probably know that.
The other question I had to the group when we talked was, are there things that we could do at the LSC level, across the state, that help our athletes be prepared for college, get a more exposure to college, or just open up the doors a little bit more, if that's something that is possible for us to try to do at a larger level versus just what we do for our own swimmers at the club level.
I mean, I would say maybe bring in outside coaches from other, I don't even know. TJ, maybe you can help. I think bring in outside coaches to kind of run a clinic or clinic for coaches. You don't necessarily, in my opinion, you don't necessarily have to have the swimmers go be coached by someone else or see somebody else or whatever. I think the best thing is for coaches to be more educated, because the coaches are who are interacting with the athletes on a regular basis more often. So I think setting up ways to educate coaches, but if you're going to bring anybody in for the athletes, it should be a former athlete, not a coach. Because athletes don't know coaches. They don't care what they have to say unless they see them regularly. But a swimmer, they know who the swimmers are. They know who swims fast, who does. If they're in tune with the sport, they know those people, those athletes. And so maybe bringing in specific athletes to come talk to them. TJ, what do you think? That's my opinion.
The biggest thing, especially coming from Louisiana, I think it's exposure to bigger and better competition and putting themselves in comfortable situations. State meet sometimes becomes who can go the slowest and still make it back into a final, and then everybody suit up in some fast at night. And that's not how it is. No matter where you go in college, you're going to be put in pressure-filled situations, and the more you can put your swimmers in that situation, the more you can coach your swimmers to be ready for those situations, the more successful they're going to be in collegiate swimming. Obviously that can bring, I don't even know if necessarily have to bring out of state, but it's just a mindset to start getting them in then a little earlier. Because I don't know any conference meet that you're going to be able to go and, except maybe your top, have a cruise in the morning and come back and gun it out at night. You're going to have to step up and throw down times in the morning to set yourself up in a situation to be successful at night. So I think it's just getting them used to other competition, the bigger competition, some more pressure field, situations. I think that's always, that would be the biggest thing in my mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. A really good point. I also have to deal with that with my incoming freshmen where, you definitely cannot do the cruise in the morning, then swim fast at night in college. Also with dual meets, you got to go fast, be up, go fast, because the race is done. You have one chance to be good, to score points, to get it done. And that's it. There's no second chance of like, ooh, maybe I could. No, you got to get it done immediately. So yeah, that is also a big one.
Well, and your dual meet scenarios don't come with prep. They come with training surrounding them typically, right?
Yeah.
Meaning it's not a focus of your week any more than it's race day.
Right.
So they have to be prepared to go fast whenever and however they feel, not just when it's all the stars aligned and you squeeze your ass into the best suit you can.
Mm-hmm. Some dual meets for us, we don't wear, like this year we've worn I've given the option for our team to wear tech suits at dual meets, which I hate. Typically I do not allow them to wear tech suits for dual meets. But this year, because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, they've been permitted to wear tech suits. But yeah, I usually use dual meets as a quality workout, like it's a quality practice to get up and go. But it's hard to break them out of, I don't care, like we should not care how you feel. You need to learn to get up, go, despite however you feel. To their frustration, if they come to me and say, oh, I didn't feel, I stop them immediately. I'm like, you cannot go off of how you feel. You have to go, adjust, pivot, do what you got to do to swim fast. But that's a skill. Like underwater kicking is a skill. That mental framework is a skill that has to be practiced. Some people have it naturally. Some people have to work hard to do it. But there needs to be it has to be practiced. And that mindset has to be practiced for sure.
Just going off of that, when the swimmers are looking for a fit, do not take their best time and look at a dual meet and think they would have fit in. I know that doesn't come from coaches, but I get a lot of swimmers who think their best times because it fits in at a dual meet, think they fitted a program. Obviously that's not the case.
Yeah. Dual meet is not the reference to use for times. For sure.
Do you guys often, or let's say in typical years, do you often have kind of the mid-season, late fall, December, kind of let's get up and be, I don't know, slightly rested and suited type of meets that are a better reference for a kid, like, assuming we're not in 2020, if we're in 2019 or 2021, would those would be reasonable benchmarks to look at?
Yeah, our mid-season invite is the week before Thanksgiving on a normal year, and we do ease back, and we do typically suit up. It's usually up to the swimmers 50-50 if we suit up or not, but I think those are good references. Yeah.
For us, no, because for some teams they rest and it's their meet that they use to qualify for NCAAs for some of their athletes. For me, I am usually using that to determine, they do suit up, but they're not rested. That I'll give them, like, if the meet is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'll give them relatively easy, maybe on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is a travel day. But I usually use that to kind of get a good feel as to who needs more rest and how tired are they, what do we need to work on, because mentally they're immediately going to get themselves up because it's a mid-season invite. So in their mind is like they should be doing a best time. So mentally they're going to be preparing themselves to do the very best that they can. And they're allowed to wear a tech suit every meet up to until that point. On a regular year, they're not allowed to wear a tech suit. So from the mental preparation of it, they are ready to go. For me, I'm looking to see how well they handle. It's probably going to be the most honest effort they're going to give for that mid-season invite. And so it's going to be the best reference that I can use to determine, okay, how tired are they actually? Are they really tired? Do I need to back off on their training? Are they just right where they need to be at? So sometimes we are going to have good times. Sometimes we are not going to have good times. I always encourage people to look at conference times to see, because that's going to be your best bet as to where they're going to fit. Each school is different. Each school rests completely and they see where they're going to go at. And within Division One, and it's half, but yeah.
All right. Well, we're getting close to an hour. Is anybody on the line have any other questions, topics for us to go over? I think I've exhausted what my brain can put out in front of the group for today.
I would definitely piggybacking off of what TJ said. Even if the state doesn't have tighter times or whatever, I think getting them again when COVID kind of hopefully figures itself out and whatever, if we could ever get as close back to normal as possible, giving them that exposure for out of state, just competing against this is the same thing that I've told in the car. Like, I'm from Barbados, so anytime I go back and I talk to Barbados swimmers, like, don't stick within the bubble of Barbados. Go compete in Florida. They do a really great job in the Caribbean. They do a really good job of competing amongst each other. But in order to reach the level or the standard that they say they want to go to, they need to be exposed to faster swimming. So I always encourage them, if you can afford to, go to Florida, because it's easy to get to Florida from Barbados. Go to Florida, compete in Florida, wherever, so that they can get a good exposure of faster swimming, because that's the only way improvement's going to take place. If they just surround them, if within the Caribbean they just surround themselves with Caribbean swimming, much improvement is not going to happen at all. So yeah. And then on top of that, again, going back to Caribbean swimming, the reason why I encourage them to do that, because if they want to go on and swim in college, that's another way that college coaches are going to see them. Not all college coaches can travel places that they may not have small pockets of fast swimming. If they, within the state of Florida, coaches are going to flock to the state of Florida because there are a lot of fast swimming. But like within using the specifics of the Caribbean, there's only pockets and tiny groups that may have fast swimming, but they're only seen because they come over to the States and they are seen. So even if it's not going to be here that the times get, the cuts get faster or competition gets faster, like go to another state and compete and see where you fit in.
It's a little bit of TJ's line of get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Yes.
See it and adapt, and typically you'll improve.
Yeah.
Ross, thanks for putting this together, and
of course,
coaches, thanks for sharing your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Anybody else with anything? No? Cool. Well, again, yes, as Derek said, thank you all for putting some time into this. Kind of thing I'd like for us to do, even if it's a different topic, while we all have a little bit of different time and less interaction with each other. I learn more from talking to other coaches than I do from reading or just, you know, absorbing it on my own. I like to hear the ideas and the real dialogue that goes along with it instead of just instructions on what somebody does to be better than what I am. So again, TJ and Leah, thank you for sharing with the Louisiana Swim coaches, and Louisiana
welcome.
coaches, thank you for your time.
You're welcome,
All right,
Mike.
thanks, guys.
I just saw Mike's text. Bye, guys.
Thank you.